start now. Veskamara Hulagunya, which means hello everyone. I'm here today to talk about the Gaelic revival in Scotland, also known as Gaelic. When you come to Scotland, you'll hear a lot of people refer to the language as Gaelic, and Gaelic tends to be the English name, which I think is the one we use in Canada. So just to show you what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about the history of the language, how it came to Scotland, how it's declined so much in the last 200 years, what's going on with the revival in both Scotland and Canada at the moment. A bit about the culture. What a lot of people don't realise is a lot of the customs and traditions that we have in Scotland today actually come from the Gaelic people and their culture. And the second half of the presentation is going to be an introduction to the language and learning basic phrases and being able to have a little bit of a conversation with each other. So to start with, looking at the history, the language arrived in Scotland around the 5th century. It was a group of people who established the Kingdom of Dalriata on the west coast of Scotland. It's the bit that sticks out, it's nearest to the Irish coast. So in the early days it was very, very close to Irish. It belongs to the Celtic language family with Irish and Manx, Welsh, Cornish and Breton. Although it's most similar to Irish and Manx, Welsh, Cornish and Breton are a different branch of the Celtic family, although there are still similarities. So I've got these three maps to show what actually happened to the language. We have the year 1200, this is what the language map of Scotland in the year 1200 is showing. The Gaelic language was very dominant, it was practically everywhere. In the south, on the border with England, we've got Scots, which was similar to Old English, and that started creeping up. By the year 1800 in the middle, you can see that Gaelic has been pushed back to the northwest because of Scots and English. And this is today, where all we've got left is the top part in green, the northwest coast and some of the islands. The figures we have for the number of speakers were in 1800, we know there were 300,000 monolingual speakers, but we don't know how many speakers there were who spoke both Gaelic and English, so that figure could be a lot more. And then today, according to the 2011 census, we only have 57,000 speakers left. So these are the reasons why it's declined so much. Going on to the research I did, the year 1500 was the peak of the Gaelic language, where it was spoken in almost everywhere in Scotland. We then got a king, James VI, in the 16th century, who was very anti-Gaelic, and we had a division between the Highlands and the Lowlands of Scotland, and he was based in the Lowlands, and he wanted to eradicate Gaelic completely and replace it with English. So he wouldn't allow church services in Gaelic, he wouldn't allow the Bible to be translated, and certainly no education in Gaelic either. He wanted to anglicise everything. And he called the Highlanders a bunch of lawless people, basically. And then lawless people, the Highlanders. So he also asked, because we're going to look at the clans in a minute, but we have the clans traditionally come from the Highlands, where you would have a chief and then a group of people who would live on that person's land. And he summoned the clan chiefs to Edinburgh, and he kind of forced them to follow his instructions, where some of their children had to come to the Lowlands to be educated in English and then be sent back to the Highlands, that sort of thing, really to try and break up the Gaelic language. But then later on, well, part of the other problem with James VI, actually, 1603 became King of England as well as Scotland, so they became one kingdom. So that obviously added to the reasons why he wanted English to dominate. 1707, which was 100 years later, the Union of the Scottish and English Parliaments, which is when we started having the UK government. So then the government of the United Kingdom, which included Scotland, was based in London. This was a big one, the late 18th century, because as you see from the maps I brought up before, there was a big decline between the year 1800 and today, so the last 200 years are really significant. the Highland clearances. What happened with that is there was a lot of the Gaelic community lived in the Highlands and Islands, which were farming communities. So they were small-scale tenant farms, and the landlords decided that it's more profitable to have sheep on the land and not people. So they were evicting a couple of 100,000 over a period of 70 to 100 years. In the beginning, it wasn't so bad because sometimes the landlord would pay for them to come to Canada and pay for the transport and ensure that they could have a job there waiting for them or some land to farm on. But it did get quite brutal later on, where some people said they had nowhere to go and they set fire to their houses to force them to leave. And then we have the Education Act in 1872. It wasn't actually worded in a way to say that they would ban Gaelic, but what they did, they just didn't mention it at all, and they just said that education had to be instructed in English. So when the children came to school, if they spoke Gaelic, they would be punished. And I've actually read myself, there's an island called St Kilda, which is no longer inhabited, but it was a Gaelic community, and it was abandoned in 1970. There is a school logbook on the internet where you can look at the original words, and it's been scanned in. And you can see the teachers have written in there in English, the children speak too much Gaelic, we need to stop them speaking Gaelic in the classroom. This was the attitude in education as well. So now looking at more positive things, which is to do with the revival. This college, Sablanostic, is based in the Isle of Skye, and that's where I've been learning Gaelic from. They opened in the 1970s specifically to run courses in the Gaelic language or in other subjects through the medium of Gaelic. We also have the Parliament in Scotland, because Scotland got devolution in the last few years, so they have their own Parliament separate from the London one. And they introduced the Gaelic Language Act in 2005. And what that means is they want the Gaelic to now have equal status with English all through Scotland. And they ask the public organisations to come up with a language plan every few years on how they're going to incorporate Gaelic into their organisation. So with that, along with education, we have some Gaelic medium schools where we didn't have them a few years ago. There's a big one in Glasgow, opened in 2006, one in Edinburgh, I think it was 2012. So at the moment, there's 3,500 students at those schools that taught all the subjects through Gaelic, and they do English as a subject. We have in total, including that figure at the top, we have 11,000 students in some kind of education where they're learning Gaelic, maybe just as a subject a couple of hours a week. And we also have the nurseries now, where at the moment just under 1,000 children are in the Gaelic nurseries. We've also got a lot of leisure activities to try and encourage people to learn. Some receive funding from the government as well. For the adults, as an example, when I was in Glasgow a few months ago, there was a play at the theatre in Gaelic with the actors on the stage and a screen in the background with subtitles in English. So that's something quite new that I wouldn't have seen years ago. There's also classes to learn the language in every town, and conversation clubs, church services. There's all sorts now, and for the children, they've got summer camps and sports activities, drama groups, and for adults as well, the drama groups. They've also got a competition called a mod, which is music, poetry, storytelling, traditional Gaelic culture activities, and they're for kids and adults, and they're all over Scotland. We also have the TV channel BBC Alba, which I don't think it's available outside the UK. You can go on the website, but I don't think it works outside the UK, unfortunately. But it's really good quality programmes with subtitles in English. So now just to talk about the culture. Clans that I mentioned before. Clan in Gaelic actually means children or offspring, that kind of thing. So the surnames that we see very often, like MacDonald, the Mac part, Mac means son, so it's son of Donald. So what you would have is the chief would have the surname, and all the descendants of the chief would have the same surname, but so would some tenants on the land. They would adopt the surname of the chief as well. So the people of Scotland with the MAC names today, they're all descended from a clan. You still find on some of the islands that one surname dominates a lot more than others, and that's the reason why. Each clan has their own tartan, so we've got lots of shops selling the tartan, and you can go in and say, I want the tartan for such a name, and they'll find it for you. We've got a lot of traditional music. I read that years ago in the Highland houses, every home had a fiddle, and they were very musical people. There's a lot of songs and music written from Gaelic people that still exist today. Something else I wanted to mention was the Gaelic psalms singing, which is something I only heard about a few months ago. I was in Isle of Lewis, and I was in a village where they were all native speakers, and they said to me, you might like to come to the church service on Easter Sunday. They're going to sing the Gaelic psalms, which is really unusual to hear nowadays. And you have a leader at the front of the church who sings a verse from the Bible, and the rest of the congregation follow different harmonies. So the video clip I've got, it's an audio recording actually that I recorded myself in the church. So it's just like 30 seconds to let you hear what it sounds like, because I can't describe it, it's really unusual. Everyone in Scotland knows what a Gaelic is. It doesn't matter if you're a Gaelic speaker or not, because we have them everywhere. The clip I'm going to show is actually my sister's wedding last year. That's me there. It's a traditional wedding we had in Edinburgh. And if you go to the islands or the Highlands, you'll see that the Gaelic events they have very regularly, like community halls every week and that kind of thing. Christmas, New Year, weddings, it's very common. They're traditional set dances with bagpipes or accordion or fiddle music, and so you learn the steps. I actually had to learn some at school, which is quite common as well, but you learn the steps and it's really fun. I've just got a short clip to show you what it's like. Just the last one on the culture, we have a lot of festivals. I think the most famous one is called Celtic Connections, and that's in all different places throughout Scotland. It's a musical festival. We have the Hebridean Festival, which is in the Isle of Lewis usually. I'm not sure if it's any of the other Hebridean islands. We also have the Highland Games. That's a picture from the Highland Games. That's tossing the caber, that sport there. And they all compete in kilts. And whiskey, what a lot of people don't know is that whiskey actually originated from the Gaelic people, and the name is Ishtair, which means water of life, the same in Irish as well. And we've got lots of different types of whiskey now from all the different islands. And we sell a lot of Celtic inspired gifts, like Celtic jewellery and Celtic knitwear, all sorts of things now in the souvenir shops. I'm just going to speak a little bit about Canada before we move on to the actual language. A lot of people don't know that actually Gaelic was the third most spoken language in Canada after English and French in the middle of the 19th century. there were about 200,000 speakers. Now it's around, I've seen different figures from about 15,000, 1,500 up to 2,000 today. All based really around Nova Scotia, Cape Breton, that sort of area. And that's the, I think that when you look at the map, that's the area that sticks out most nearest to the UK. So that's where, when the Highland clearances happened in Scotland, that was where they were all placed. And fortunately, some people did pass the language down through their family. But some people didn't, because they thought to live in Canada they would need English, so they kind of abandoned the Gaelic and didn't pass it down to their children. And also it wasn't taught through education either. But now, I'm not an expert on Nova Scotia, we have two other Gaelic speakers in here who might know a bit more than me. They do have some education to encourage people to learn it. There's a college, and you can do immersion courses there, and a university, and I think a county. There's about a dozen places are offering courses, and local societies as well. Okay, so we're going to look at the language now. So, the characteristics: only 10 irregular verbs. Pronunciation. Now that can be a bit daunting at first. When you look at a book, really, you look at it, oh, I can't read that. You try and read it as you would read English, it's not going to work. You have to learn how to pronounce the letters in a different way as to English. We have broad and slender vowels, and either side of a consonant, depending on whether you've got a broad or a slender vowel, can change the sound of the pronunciation of the consonant. There's 4 cases, but I don't find them difficult really. I don't think the cases are the most difficult thing. It's not like Slavic languages where it's a lot more complicated. The order tends to be verb, subject, object in a sentence. There's no direct translation for yes or no. So I think people that know Chinese might be able to relate to this. When somebody asks you a question, are you going out tonight? You have to kind of answer or I'm going. That's kind of how it translates. And they have lenition, which we'll talk about in the next slide. Anyone who knows Irish will know what that is. Okay, lenition is a softening of a process whereby certain consonants which appear at the beginning of words are made softer. This is indicated in writing by adding an H after the consonant. And usually the preceding word determines whether the following word will lenite. So there are circumstances when a word has to lenite and when it doesn't. I've got some of the simple examples here, but if you come to learn the language, you would get to know all the different circumstances when you need to lenite a word. So for example, the word mak, which means son. The word for his and hers is a, it's the same. So to differentiate, to say his son, a, vak, mh together is v, a v sound. Her son, a, mak, that's a bit easier. So that's how we would differentiate the thing. Fuhar, a fuhar, his sister. Fuhar is the word on its own, sister, without being lenited, or a fuhar is his sister. So her sister would not lenite there. And the PH is an F sound like in English. The pronunciation requires a whole lesson on its own, really. I can only touch on the very basics today. Another example is ma, which means good, the TH is silent. Mat and va, it lenites here, making it a V sound. Good morning. The reason why it lenites in that sentence is because it's feminine, it's following a feminine noun. So that's another circumstance where but like I say, it's really a whole lesson on its own. One of the cases, the vocative case, is when you address people, you call them by name, or you say hello to them. So it doesn't work, put it here, it doesn't work in every name, but if you've got like a Gaelic name, then it is going to work. So like my name, they say to me, instead of hello Maureen, they'll say hello Maureen. I'm used to that now, it sounds strange at first, which is similar to the name Mary. Hello Averi, or Avari actually they pronounce that as. So Mary, Maureen, those kind of names, because they start with A, M, they would lenite. And because they've got those, my name's Irish, so that's why it works. Seamus is James, so hello, a Hamish, SH is silent. and at the end, in the male names, you get H and you get an extra I after the last vowel. But again, that's probably requires only half an hour or so of practicing with various names, and you'll see how it works. Because obviously when you put the H after the first letter, you need to learn how it's actually used for pronunciation.
I have to do the same.
Okay, so we're going to go through some readings, and then after this I've got some weather expressions so you can at least have a little conversation with each other. So I've put it in sort of the phonetics there to make it easier to pronounce, because when you read it, it's not obvious how you're going to pronounce it. The first one's quite simple, Beskama, which means good afternoon or good evening. So if you repeat after me, Beskama. And the next one, what is your name? The tricky bit there is the last word, O-R-T. We put an S sound in between the R and the T, even though you can't see it, but that's a rule that always applies. So that's for what is your name, J, and tenant a horst, because you put the SH sound in between the R and the T. So if you repeat after me, J and tenant a horst. J and tenant a horst. So I'll explain how that translates literally. It might make you understand better. What name is on you? That's the way I have to say it. The verb to be and the verb to have work very differently in Gaelic, but it's the same in Irish. So if you learn one, you've got a head start going on the other one. This is simple, Islisha, and then your name. So if you repeat that after me, Islisha. That's an easy one. And then to say it, how are you? Kiamara how. And that's an answer. Very well, thank you. Gleva tapalat. And then, if you were wanting to ask the question back to someone, how are you yourself? This FH is silent.
Of course it is.
So, thank you. So look at this quickly. Kiamara ha u hein. So just remember the TH is silent.
In all positions? Is it silent in all positions?
No,
It's
but
usually H.
no, but the first TH is ha, the second is silent, right?
Ha, yeah,
Ha,
yeah.
ooh.
So you pronounce the H. Yeah, it's not TH like in. So it's not tha. That's what I meant. Ha.
But the second one is silent.
Kiamara ha u.
It's not Hamara ha hu.
It's silent. In Uwu, it's an exception in Uwu. It's silent.
Okay, that's just how I picked
But
up.
F
Kiamara
is
ha u hein. Yeah.
FH usually is silent, but in Hain, that's an exception. It's pronounced like an H.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm just saying it how I hear people say it. So yeah, because I've got it there. Hein. Yeah, it is hein. So it's Kiamara ha u hein. And then the next one, not bad, that's an easy one. Hanil Donna. And then goodbye. This is it. You pronounce it like it's an SH in English. This would be Narshin Lat. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to have a go. We've got two other speakers in the room to help as well. And if you want to ask me,
Oh, it depends on how you do Avel is Jewess, and Nachel is
practice this as well. And this is the last line we've got. So I thought we could put some other expressions in because it's something you can have a little conversation about after you do the bases. So the top phrases, you can see the words Kiamara again for how. Okay, so to pronounce this top one, which is how is the weather. Kiamara ha and chija.
Kiamara ha and chija.
Yeah, so remember, if you find it hard to follow, look at the phonetics there. So some answers. Ha and tuska an.
Ha and tuska an.
This bit here actually means there's water on it. Did you say that? There's water.
The water is in it.
Yeah, something like that. There's it doesn't make sense in English because there's no actual verb in the name. So you find that there's a lot of expressions in Gaelic. It can be something is at me, something is on me, that kind of thing. Especially when you're describing people, like eye colour, hair colour, that kind of thing. Ha-i grianach, it's a sunny. Ha-i grianach. So you have to get the CH sound at the end, grianach. Everybody do that straight away. It is windy. Ha-i garra.
Ha-i garra.
And this bit here, you get like an imaginary in there. Just because when it's an R and a BH together, it's easier for them to say garra. In fact, I think Scottish people in general, even the ones that speak English, when we say, if we were asked to say that, it's hard for us to say, like the word girl, for example. We can't say the R and the L together. We put this imaginary A in the mid, girl. I can't say it any other way. And I think that's probably where it comes from. Ha-i voor.
Ha-i voor.
Ha-i bla.
Ha-i bla.
And ha-i che.
Ha-i che.
So the verb here, ha, means is. So literally you're saying, is it warm? Which in English sounds like a question. So if you want to ask a question, is it something? The ha changes to a veil, and that's why we know, that's how you know you're asking a question. So to say, is it sunny? A veil i grianach. And then to answer it, because what I mentioned before, there's no direct word for yes and no, you say ha, which is. So what you're saying is, it is sunny. That is the way you have to answer it. So. When we were doing our exams, they said to us, if you just say ha i grianach, you're going to lose a mark. They want you to say yes first, which is ha, so you say it twice. Ha i grianach.
Ha i grianach.
And if it's not sunny, ha nil, which is no, ha nil i grianach. Literally, it's not, it isn't there. It isn't sunny, because there isn't direct word for no. So you can have a little bit of practice with Kiamara ha and chija. Ask a person next to you, make something up, or you can ask this question, is it sunny or is it warm or something like that, and then you can work out the answers for a couple of minutes. Yeah.
Can we make a question just by changing the position, like ha-i-che?
No. Ha is all the statements. It's got to be avia for the question. So give you a couple of minutes to try a conversation with the person next to you.
Kim had a change too.
My arm is killing me.
I would have said to you, literally when you're like,
Last slide. There are a lot of resources. I've already written an article for Fluent in 3 months. It's easy for me to give you just that link because all the resources are on there. So if you want to write that down or take a picture of it or whatever, that's got everything listed from beginning to end and all sorts of different resources. And time for any questions then?
I have 15 minutes. Here.
Okay.
Exactly on time. We maybe planned for 30 minutes, so yeah, it's 15 minutes for questions.
Okay.
When we look at the spelling system, it looks very opaque if you're an English speaker.
Yeah.
I assume there is an internal logic that holds together
Yes.
that you get there.
Yeah, I found it pretty scary when I looked at it at first, and I know other people have as well. Did you think that when you first started?
It was a long time ago, but once you learn the system, it's very suited to the language.
Yeah, you do get used to it after a while, and that's why I say there's like, you'd have lessons with a lot of emphasis on pronunciation and spelling rules and that kind of thing. So it does take a while to pick up compared to maybe Latin languages, for example, because it is quite different. And some people, they look at it and think, oh, they're really put off, I don't understand anything, it doesn't look like anything, I know. But I would say, like, if you have a good teacher or you use the websites that are listed on here for the pronunciation, it's not too bad at all.
Was it written with another alphabet?
No, no.
It was written in the Latin alphabet before English was.
I'm not sure about that. I know that I know it's a bit patchy.
Or at least
and
around the
straight
same
and
time. Like, that's why they don't have the letter V or letter J, because those letters didn't exist when they started to write them.
Because I was going to ask whether the reason why you see that the spelling is different from what you might expect in a lot of different languages, maybe because it was based also on a much earlier stage of the language, so the spelling doesn't match the current spoken language. I don't know, is it the case that...
It matches it better than English, but that's not saying much. So, like, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, especially in Scottish Gaelic, they have a lot of silent letters that used to be pronounced and then aren't anymore. But the thing is with the letters with the H and everything, that has a function because then you can, when you lenite, you just add H and then that changes the sound. So it's not...
That's the thing, it's a lesson in itself, really, learning about the lenition and how it changes the sound, because some words, like we've seen with math, which is good, changes to bath, so the sound is quite different. But I think with the lenition, you get used to that quite quickly, really. It's not too difficult now.
But that's why it makes more sense that it's not written like with a V, because we know that it comes from ma, and you have an H in it.
Well, it's like the example I used with his and her son. You've got to, because the word a means his and means hers, means her, you've got to differentiate between whether you're talking about his son or her son, and that's the way to do it. So,
so with the consonants changing, like at the beginning and end of words, in most that's something similar, but it's sort of like not part of it's not a grammatical thing, just that it sounds better. Is that how it is in Scottish, or is it like depending on the grammatical consent changes with the gender and those things?
Well, yes, words do lenite if you've got an adjective following it. An adjective has to go with the feminine now, then it does lenite. So that's always the case. I'm sure that answers your question. What else were you trying to say?
Because like just as an example, good is duh, but then if you want to say that with an N before it, like good and the not good, then you have to make the good before it and close better. Is it sort of like, is there something like that in Scottish?
No. No, it tends to be that when you lenite, it's to do with like sometimes it's affected by the cases that you're using, or whether the word's feminine, or whether it's after his. What you say my something, your something, his something, it will lenite. Hers, theirs, ours, it doesn't. So it's just a set of rules that you would learn. But when you say in Scottish, do you mean Scottish Gaelic or Scots dialect?
Gaelic, yeah.
Gaelic, yeah. There's just certain instances that you learn, and that's it.
What's the general point of view on the whole revival in Scotland? People that are not language teachers and
It's mixed.
we like it, or we think it's not?
It's mixed. I think most people do encourage it, really.
Okay.
but there's some people who are against it, and sort of money and that kind of thing. But on the whole, certainly got off people in Glasgow anyway who don't speak it. They do like the idea that it's coming back. I think it's good for the kids to learn, and that it's part of their heritage, and most people see that. Yeah.
So I wonder what was your background, Maureen? I don't know. So you're not a native speaker, okay?
No.
But so what?
My great-grandfather was an English speaker, but it was easier for me to learn Scottish Gaelic just because of where I lived, and then I kind of think had access to native speakers. I'd always wanted to learn it, but because of work commitments, I was learning other European languages for work. And my plan was always when I get more time that I would study it properly. So I'm on a course at the moment, so I'm going to continue.
If I'm allowed to talk about politics, how do you think, let's say that Scotland becomes independent,
Yeah.
that's right, how do you think that would affect revival? Do you think that would encourage it and kind of gain
Some
its
people
new-
have tried to bring, when we had a referendum for independence last time, some people tried to bring the Gaelic language into the debate, and I don't think it was relevant because it's just a language. It's nothing to do with politics, in my opinion. But you did get people saying they wanted to remain part of the union with the UK, and that should just be English, and that's it. You do get people saying that, but I think if the independence went ahead, I think it would be probably better for the Gaelic. Maybe they'd have more money to put into it. I don't know. It's quite hard to say unless it happened, but I think with the money and the effort that they put into it at the moment, it's really good compared to like even 15 years ago when there really wasn't very much at all.
And does that come from the EU at present?
No, I think it comes from Scottish Parliament.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is the position of, for example, I mean, the lowlands or the lowlands? I mean, how do they view Gaelic? Because they view Gaelic as more or less up in the Highlands and
Yes.
in the islands, while they themselves view themselves as really English speakers who speak Lowlands or a special form of English.
Well,
Are they interested in learning Gaelic, or they
yes,
or
there's
they
classical-
consider themselves really more anglicized
I think they consider
Lowlands?
themselves more anglicised, but there are classes all over the country. The only places that aren't really affected are Orkney and Shetland, and that's because they were actually Norwegian islands until the 15th century, and they were given to Scotland as a gift from Norway. So they don't have any Gaelic history at all. So I don't think they're producing the language plans that the other local authorities are producing. They would rather teach their own dialects in the schools, which is more like Norwegian. They don't really have Tartan traditions up there or anything like that. So it's quite different.
And in Glasgow, for example,
Oh, Glasgow's got a lot.
was that,
Glasgow's really good.
but the Irish population in
Yes,
Glasgow,
that's
how
what
how do
my
they
family-
view Gaelic?
Yeah.
Do they want to learn it, or they consider
It's
it?
very positive in Glasgow, that's the impression I get.
Yeah.
The Irish people were like over a century ago, that's where one of my family, that's how they came to Scotland. A lot of them came at the time of the Irish famine, and that's why my great-grandfather spoke the Irish language. But in Glasgow, I've just heard a lot of positive things about it. They actually have a magazine and stuff for Gaelic culture and language in Glasgow, lots of events going on. So in Glasgow it's very positive.
No, but the Irish themselves, are
The
those of Irish
Irish-
descent, in other words, are they
Irish
really
descent,
learning it?
people like me, we don't feel very Irish anymore because it's so long ago that we don't feel like we feel Scottish now. So it's probably a bit different for us now, yeah. Because you're looking at majority of the Irish immigrants came to Glasgow around middle of the 19th century up to maybe early 1900s, and so we're on like maybe 4th or 5th generation.
It's not a bit like the difference between the two soccer teams. You know, the ones that the Irish support and the ones that the Protestants support.
Yeah. Yes.
Outside of the UK, you mentioned Canadian Maritimes. Outside of the UK, where is Gaelic, whether it's any of those types, where is it spoken the most in the world outside of the UK?
Canada. Do you
Really?
agree with that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially Cape Breton and Eastern Mainland of Nova Scotia. That's where the largest outside of the UK.
Now, when you say Breton, because you were talking
Breton
about the,
Island.
no,
Yeah.
I got that,
Yeah.
but now I'm
Yeah.
changing
Yeah.
from
Okay.
our Cape Breton to, your first slide said, you know, Isle of Man and all the different types of Gaelic there are.
Yeah,
One
Isle
of them
of
was
Man's
Breton.
yeah.
Do you mean the Brittany coast of France?
Oh, yes, yes. The Brittany coast of France
Oh,
speaks Breton, and that's one of the Celtic languages. Yes, so.
cool.
Yeah,
One
it's just
other-
coincidence, this is a place called Cape Breton where a lot of the immigrants came from Scotland.
Still quite a big Welsh-speaking community in Patagonia and in South America.
Really?
Southern tip was like
Yeah.
Wow.
5 more minutes.
Okay.
Maybe a few more questions. Just to let you know.
So mutual intelligibility is there between Scots Gaelic and Irish
Oh,
Gaelic?
I've tested that one. Quite a lot, surprisingly. I've just come back from the Aran Islands in Ireland last month, and the people there speak Irish as a native language, and I tried it out on them, and they can understand very well. In written, it's easier, because some of the pronunciation is different, although the words are almost the same. And I've tried it a few times actually. Have you tried that, Stuart?
Not much, but somebody here at this conference says it to me in Irish, and I was amazed I understood.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you can. Not everything, but
it was something very simple though.
yeah. Well, there's a video on YouTube. I've forgotten the name of it, but it's like a documentary where a group of Irish speakers go to Isle of Lewis and they travel around speaking in Irish and the folks speaking back in Scottish Gaelic, and they're all understanding each other. So.
And what about the Gaelic that's spoken in Cape Breton? Is that very different from Scots Gaelic?
I don't think it is. You would know.
It
that.
is. It is a form of Scottish Gaelic.
Yeah.
It is sort of, they have their own dialects, like Canadian ones, and like the loan words are more like North American English than British English, but they have some of the dialects in Cape Breton have died out in Scotland, although some of them are still the same. So they have a lot more of like the broad L turning into a W in some of them.
Right.
But
I don't know a lot about the Canadian version.
it's not that different.
No.
Yeah.
We're out of time. Got one more question?
No, yeah, we
Last
have time. So
question.
we have 3 more minutes. So
Okay.
depending on how it goes, a couple more questions. Yeah.
Is it a good language for expressing emotions? Like, they have different verbs for like and love and.
Yes, expressing emotions. The only thing I know that's a lot more kind of rich than English is the weather expressions. They have so many more expressions of different types of rain, different types of wind, stuff like that. But emotions, I've not noticed whether that's much different to what kind of vocabulary we have in English. What would you say?
Well, I would say that like you're talking about verbs. Gaelic doesn't like verbs. There's so
No,
many
the verbs
verbs
work differently.
lacking, and you have to like get around it. So there's no verb to love. Like you have to say like more, so just love acting on you. Like
Yeah, that's
no.
what we were saying before about something
Yeah.
being at you, something being on you.
Yeah.
There are expressions where you can't translate directly from English. You've got to learn them as they are that way. You know, you can describe hair, eye colour, you know, some black hair is on me.
Colors are all different.
Yeah, and the verb to have is not really a verb. So you're saying something is at me. I think that's the best way to translate.
It's like Arabic.
That thing about at you, on you, could that be the origin of some English idioms? So good on you, back at you. I don't know. Or is it completely just random that it's that is reminiscent of? I don't know. It's just that good on you, why on you? Why would it be?
I've never thought about
Would
it
it be?
like that, but
Could
it's
it be a
possible.
link there? I don't know.
Yeah.
You don't think so?
Possibly.
Possibly, but not.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Where do you see it going, like, in 50 years from now, like, could be?
We're hoping that the speakers will increase by the next census. We do a census every 10 years, so the last one's 2011, because we've got so many children in the education system. Now we're thinking the next 10 years the number of young speakers will have increased. there's always going to be elderly speakers who will have passed away in the next 10 years, so that's going to decrease in the over 65s. But we're hoping the young learners will bring it back up.
But do you think, oh, sorry.
Does the census ask questions about level of language, or does it say just do you
asks,
speak Gaelic, yes or
no,
no?
it specifies how, being able to understand, being able to write, read, and speak.
How much of the second learners right now who are learning, like in Ireland as well as in, because I've noticed a great deal of them speak with a heavy English accent, even though they speak, well, they know some of the grammar, but the accent itself is really English. They don't pronounce the R's, for example, which are supposed to be rolled. They pronounce them like R, like in English.
In Ireland, you mean?
In Ireland, yes, some of them in Ireland, but also in Scotland too. The second language learners, not the first language learners.
Yeah.
And where there is, I mean, there was actually a book which was written about the transformation of various languages, like Maori, for example, is being learned by second language learners.
Yeah.
And many of them are adopting and bringing in English pronunciation habits and linguistics. And the same thing with many what they call morbid languages or obsolescent languages, languages which are don't have a lot of young people learning it, where the second language learners are bringing in their own, very much like somebody who speaks French with a heavy English accent.
Yeah. There's an article on the internet, if you search it, you find it, Gaelic with a Glasgow accent. And it's because there's a lot of kids in Glasgow learning it, and obviously, I mean, when I went to Lewis, well, can't tell what kind of accent you've got because the native speakers from each island have all got different accents, and they can tell which island you're from. But for me, they can't place it. Well, obviously, I know I'm Scottish, but I've got a Scottish accent, but I've not got a typical island accent. So yes, that's true with the accents, that if we're getting a lot more speakers brought up in Glasgow,
because I've actually heard speakers in Irish, and the ones who are second language learners from Dublin and other parts, they really have a very heavy English accent.
Right.
Even though they speak fluent, they seem to be speaking fluently. And then you hear the ones who learned it as from birth, and it's totally different.
Yeah.
Very different.
I mean, when in Scotland, when I hear people from the islands or from the Highlands speaking English, I can usually tell that I'm a native Gaelic speaker because their accent is a bit different to ours.
The intonation, the accent, the pronunciation, everything.
I can't really describe why I can't hear it.
It's very beautiful.
Yeah.
What's the difference between Scots?
That will be the last one, okay?
Okay.
Because we're over time already, so let's take the last one.
Scots tends to be what, if you look on Google, there's a lot of sites now. It's the way we speak in our dialect, if you like. Nothing to do with Gaelic at all. It's like the Scottish version of English. So we have a lot of words that we say in Scotland that we don't say in England that probably would know what we mean. And you can get dictionaries and all sorts for it now. So usually when someone says Scots, that's what it means. If you know the poet Robert Burns, he was a famous poet in the 18th century. Resident Scots, the song everybody sings at New Year, Auld Lang Syne, that's Scots. The Scots 200 years ago you'd probably find very difficult to understand today, but it's obviously changed over time. So that was more of the lowlands, the way people in the lowlands used to speak.
Is that what King James spoke when he said get rid of
Yes, he
Gaelic?
did, Scots and English, yeah.
I think it has to be it. We're a little over time, so thank you.